Here, use one bar. The next 20 seconds or so. What do you got, sir? Okay, we will call the September 11th, 2023 Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day.
Here.
Supervisor Ayers.
Here.
Supervisor Lyons.
Here.
And Supervisor McDaniel's present as well. We will now hold a prayer for the board, followed by a moment of silence in recognition of September 11th. And then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Those attending are not required to participate, but if you'd like to join us, please stand.
As we gather here tonight to do the work of the county, let us remember those that lost their lives on this day 22 years ago. Let us pray for those that are grieving their loved ones and the many that bear the scars and illness of that day. Let us remember the hundreds of firefighters and other public safety personnel that gave their lives to save others. Let us never forget them or their sacrifices. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will hold citizen comments near the beginning of the meeting. We will do our best to take citizen comments remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comment. To join by telephone, you may dial into the number listed on the county website. The webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you are calling in by telephone. Any changes to the agenda? Not aware of any.
Sir, I'd like to add consideration of appointment of acting clerk in connection with BPSA bond for this week.
Okay, we will just add that to the discussion after the public hearing. Is that adequate?
Sir, thank you.
All right. Recognitions and presentations. What a great honor, especially on today's date. We have Chief Ramsey here with us to tell us about some promotion of some staff members.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We really appreciate your time this afternoon. And the purpose of this evening is to recognize some of our new promotions that we've been able to do thanks to you all in the way of our lieutenants. As you know, we first promoted lieutenants back in 2019 when we only had 2 shifts. And then in April this year, as we started the 24-hour ambulance, it created a 3rd shift, and you all approved for us to have additional supervisor, which give us 3 lieutenants. And these lieutenants, when they're on their shift, they manage their folks. They ensure that our ambulances are staffed. They run calls, work with our volunteers. We're really excited for the group that we have in place to manage our organization from day to day. These are the folks that interact with all of our career staff and ensure they have what they need, and provide Deputy Chief Moore and myself with information, and so that we can carry out our day-to-day tasks. So with that, we'll start with Patrick Ayler. He's actually one of the first ones that we hired back in 2018. And he's been with us since then, obviously, and was promoted to lieutenant on June 1st, 2023. And then Kendall Klein, Lieutenant Klein has been with us since July of 21. She is an advanced EMT, and also she was promoted along with Patrick on June the 1st of 2023. And then we have Justin Hines, Lieutenant Hines, comes to us. He's a native of Rockbridge County. He actually just started August 31st of 23. It comes to us with a lot of years experience, 30 years of EMS, fire EMS, and was able to come back and work here. Many of y'all already know Justin. So, and then Shane Watts. Shane has been with us for a long time. Shane's actually been here longer than I have, considering he actually was part-time in April of 2016 and assisted with some transition there. Did a great job, and then came on to us full-time in February of 22. Worked as a paramedic, again, long time service as a paramedic on the helicopter and with Carilion Clinic, and has now been promoted to lieutenant as of July 1. And Shane is actually heading up our EMT program at the high school, teaching the students, and has brought that to a new level. We've got the class at our office due to the renovations of the Innovation Center this year. So things are going really well. And we just like to take this time just to introduce these folks to you all and recognize their recent promotions.
I'm sure on behalf of the board, we would just like to say thank you for your service to our community. The impact that you make for our citizens is very appreciative, and we know it's a lot of time and dedication and sacrifice on your part, but we certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. Can I take a photo real quick?
Yes, please. Nobody ever wants to stay for the meeting. All right, and citizen comments. Has anyone signed up wishing to address the board?
No, sir.
Okay, is there anyone online wishing to address the board?
No, sir.
And is there anyone present who didn't have the opportunity to sign up wishing to address the board? All right, moving along, we have the August 28th minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Any questions, concerns, comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? No. And a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have consideration of the financial report. The finance report and county appropriation resolution. Mr. Harrison?
Yes, thank you. The amount of bills for this period is $741,038.18. Additional general fund appropriations total $390,324. 25,000 of that is grants for the sheriff's office, and the remainder is the transfer we're going to do for the purchase of the new equipment for the ambulances. Additional capital fund appropriations, 3,940, and that was for the cost of the replace or to fix the roof at the health department. It was a little bit more than what was budgeted. And capital purchases was 1,770, and that's for the plotter. That was a little bit more than anticipated. The total revenue through 8/31, revenues are at $4,983,211. General fund expenditures, $11,018,990. A little bit higher than on both the revenue and the expenditures than the average, but it's not out of range. And what is normal, we typically will expenses until we get our first property tax payment. The expenses are going to exceed the revenue. But as of 17% of the year has passed as of August 31st. Our sales tax is right on track at 17%. Our mills tax is a little bit higher at 18%. And our lodging tax is at 15%, but that should pick up back again in the fall. When we look at our lodging tax history, the fall is actually our better months at lodging tax historically. And that's all I have for the report.
Is there any questions from Mr. Harrison? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the resolution? A second?
Second.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And Chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have an update on economic development. Ms. Flint?
So because we have a lot of new construction projects and renovations going on, I just wanted to run through a few things with you. These are also included in Chris's update for community development as well. The Route 11 Interstate Corridor projects includes the Chick-fil-A, which is projected as of right now. These are tentative dates, but this is what they're projecting. They want to open by December 1st. Dunkin' Donuts, we don't have an exact date on that one, but it will be by the end of the year or sooner. Jersey Mike's opened in July. They're pretty busy most of the time. Starbucks is projected to be complete in the next month or so. They're actually looking at shooting for November. True Hilton is still projected for March of 2024, as long as things go well through the winter. And then the co-op's Kubota location is actually currently under construction. No projected date, but thinking maybe end of the year, early next year. So the Route 11 projects is the Residence Inn, which is currently the erosion and sediment control permits were issued, and they are currently working on the site work for that. That is the site located where the old car wash is or was. Sorry. And then the 7-Eleven plans were approved by TCO for the former Aunt Sarah's Pancake House at exit 195. So that will be moving forward in the next couple months. They haven't obtained their building permits yet. The solar farm is currently under construction in Fairfield. That site work has begun. And then the Dollar General in Fairfield, plans were approved by TCO, but no permits have been issued yet. So that construction will start. So there's just a few economic development projects that are going on that Chris has looked at through community development, and I've also looked at through economic development. So just wanted to give you a brief update on that. Any questions on those? The second item we have going on is the graphic and branding campaign. We had a survey that was sent out. There were internal stakeholders and external stakeholders that did the first survey, and there were about 100 responses on that. And then a third survey went out for the general public, and there were 292 responses on that. Haven is now taking that information and working on our brand book, and our next meeting with them will be on the 28th of September, and we'll have an update from there. And then as far as the strategic economic development plan goes, I wanted to ensure that you were aware of the progress with that. I finalized the draft business retention and expansion plan. I just want to go through that with the EDA, and then that'll be complete. The entrepreneur and business support plan, I'm still populating the data on that, but it's almost done as well. Hope to present that to the EDA on Monday as well. And then the incentive policy and social media policies are currently under review with some edits, additional edits needed on those before those are complete. But those were all items that were due in July and August of the strategic economic development plans. We are slightly behind, but we are making progress. And that's all I have for now. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Excellent. Next up, we have consideration to apply for regional recomplete grant through the CSPDC. Ms. Flint, I believe you have this as well.
Yes, so this is a grant that has been issued by the Economic Development Administration that is available to certain localities across the United States that qualify where their prime age employment is lacking or significantly trails the national average, and that includes us. It also includes the two cities as well as Bath and Allegheny County. So the CSPDC, on behalf of the regional footprint, would like to apply for this recompete grant in order to implement a pilot program is what phase one is. And that's basically where they come up with a plan or a project, and the CSPDC is still currently working on the full dialogue of what we're going to look for. in order to help us maintain and recruit prime age population, which increases our labor force participation rate. So that's what the grant is for. So the first phase of the grant is, there is no match funding required in the first phase. They're only giving out 20 grants throughout the United States. So it's an extremely competitive grant. With EDA grants, it does look more favorable for multiple localities to participate. So that's the reason for the addition of Bath and Allegheny as well. But it will be set up in a subcategory because, of course, we're not all the same for what we're competing for. So the CSPDC is currently working on the grant application. We need to provide a letter of support so we choose to participate. It could require some match funding in the implementation phase if awarded, but it makes the grant application look better. It's actually not required to match the funding. But if you do provide some match funding, it weighs your application heavier. And it really just depends on if you're selected in the first 20. So it's a great way for us to come up with a plan to retain, attract individuals of that prime working age. And like I said, that's 25 to 54 years of age. So, which is something we mentioned in the strategic economic development plan is something we would like to try and do. So if you would like to proceed with supporting the application, we can do so, and I will work on the letter of support, which is due relatively soon.
Yeah, I don't see any reason not to apply and see. Is there any questions?
I like grants.
Yes. All right, is there a motion to apply for the grant? Second?
Second.
All right. Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Thank you, Ms. Flint. Next up, we have consideration of authorization to exercise option to purchase Rayfine property from BJB Properties. Ms. Huffman?
Yes, sir. The county entered into an option to purchase agreement with BJB Properties for a 22.012 acre tract of land located on the east side of Steels Fort Road, a short distance from Rayfine Road in the South River Magisterial District for economic development purposes. It's shown and described on a plat that's included in your agenda and recorded in Plat Cabinet 4, slide 582. Due diligence evaluations have been completed for the property, including a phase 1 environmental assessment and a title search revealing no issues that would hinder proceeding with the purchase. This item is for the board if you wish to adopt the proposed resolution authorizing exercise of the option, at which point we would proceed with closing within 60 days. And I'll be glad to answer any
Yeah, is
questions.
there any questions, comments from Ms. Huffman? Yeah, you know, I think the county's we've been pretty active over the last year or two trying to find land to acquire so that we can, as Ms. Flynn has told us on numerous occasions, when we receive calls from whether it's the Shenandoah Planning Commission or whether it's out of Richmond, first thing I want to know is, do you have any land available? And our answer for a number of years has been no. So this gives us the opportunity to compete with other localities to acquire business for our area. Is there a motion to approve to exercise the option to purchase the property?
I'll move.
And a second? Okay, any discussion?
I'll be the second if you want, whatever.
All right, Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have the approval of the advertisement for the county attorney. As I'm sure everyone's aware now, Ms. Huffman has announced her retirement, with February 29th of 2024. her guidance and advice has been instrumental to me as an individual, and I think to the board as a whole and to the county. But even though we're going to miss her, we got to find someone to try to fill those shoes. So is there any, Ms. Huffman, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I included in your agenda a proposed advertisement for the position. It includes the major areas that some proficiency would be required, and the other minimum requirements. There are a few items that the board may want to discuss, term, residency requirement, salary, those types of things. Or I had suggested that you might want to refer this to either the personnel committee or an ad hoc committee to process this beyond this point.
Is there any discussion by the board on that?
I would just start, I was thinking that personnel committee made sense, not only because I'm on that, but that's just how we've handled the other ones before, and we've had good success. It's such a splint, Mr. Slade. So while there are big shoes to fill, that just seemed to be a good procedural method from my perspective.
No objection to that.
No, that's why we have personnel committee. So the personnel committee can handle that moving forward with input from all board members.
Absolutely.
And, as far as, salary, term, residency and all, I would think that would be maybe a negotiated items, depending on who may apply. I mean, would that make
Certainly
sense?
could be, yes, sir.
All right, so is there a motion to advertise for county attorney? And have the personnel committee handle that moving forward? Is that adequate? Is that what you're looking for? Or would you?
I guess maybe a discussion with the personnel committee before we
Right.
put it
Before you
out
advertise, yes.
might be helpful.
Would you want it to come back to us, or do you want us to approve it subject to the personnel committee reviewing it?
I think you can do it either way, but I guess maybe it should come back to the full board if there are any changes to what we have.
So
Does that work?
yeah, so we're seeking a motion to approve the advertisement contingent on the personnel committee reviewing it, and any major changes would come back to the board for our approval. Adequate? Okay, is there a motion for that?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
All right. Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Clemmer's term expires later this month. And I believe we have the application from Mr. Carol Comstock. Is there any discussion on Mr. Comstock?
Think he would do very well.
Is that a motion to approve him?
Yes, it is.
All right, and a second?
I said, oh, yeah, you go right ahead. We all say.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All right, Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis? And chair votes yes as well. Next up, we have the monthly staff reports. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those? Any questions, comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I moved.
Second? All right. Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day? Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Lyons?
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. And we will pause until 6 o'clock for a public hearing on the VPSA bond. Oh. Sorry. I started to say something. Should have. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. When we start in on the bond. Yeah, just and for what it's for and the reason, and so we can just get that out of the way. We'll do a motion, vote on that, and then we'll do a motion and vote on the bond. That's that. Mhm. On the property. That makes sense. We can circle back. Mhm. Yep, I'm sorry. We-
Should I get you some crackers?
I wrote it on the side and I skipped over it. Does that came out after I did the deadline?
Just laughing at you.
All right, as it's 6 o'clock, we will reconvene. for the public hearing on the VPSA bond for the Rockbridge Innovation Center. Mr. Harrison?
Yes, thank you. Before you is I would like to start out this public hearing was duly advertised in accordance with statute. We advertised it both in our local News Gazette and because of the timing of the new public notice requirements in state law, we also advertised it twice in the News Leader. The bond is for the Rockbridge Innovation Center, formerly known as the Floyd SK. The not to exceed amount is 18,700,000. As I want to mention, as you may recall, about a month ago when we were presenting these things, the finances on this, that is assuming we don't know what the market's going to do. So VPSA, as you know, it's a statewide pool of bonds that they pull together all the different school projects around the state, and then set it out to the bond market. At this time, we don't know no one knows if the bond market at that time come late October is going to demand a discount or a premium. So in order to calculate the par amount, BPSA says, let's go with the maximum, which would be a 10% discount, which would increase the par amount on the bond. But actually, if it sells at a discount, your total interest rate over time actually is preferable. We had our due diligence meeting with BPSA and bond counsel and with the school in attendance as well. We have made it clear to the VPSA staff that we will be reducing the contingency amount out of the bond request. And there will be time to do that. As presented in your board packet, the purchase bond agreement and the proceeds agreement are all just presented in substantial form. Those actual dollar amounts will be set as we get closer to settlement date. But I just want to reassure the board, as we said, we will only borrow the max amount of principal we need to complete this project. And I want to risk of being redundant. We have already informed BPSA we'll be reducing that request by the estimated contingency.
But will it also be reduced by the grant that the school system
It will be.
awarded?
And we've been looking at, in some of the previous stuff that has been presented to you by Davenport, we're looking at a 30-year bond. It's going to be a 25-year. BPSA told us it'll be a 25-year bond, not a 30-year bond. That doesn't affect, what that does affect is we'll be paying less interest over time. And also part of the reason for when you're looking at the cost of the project of the total construction cost, as you may recall, we want to capitalize those initial couple years interest, so we stay on track with our total debt payments together. So those initial few years are going to be capitalized interest. So that's also part of the reason why you see that higher par amount versus what the total the project costs. Historically, is my understanding with VPSA, never comes in right at par. So, but it's usually within about either 3% discount, 3% premium. But again, BPSA says, what's the worst? I shouldn't say the worst, because actually a 10% discount again would be beneficial on the interest side. But it would increase the par amount. And they say go with the 10% initially, and then we'll see when we get everyone's pulled together and get a feel for what the bond market's going to demand. The one more thing. Again, this fits within our overall debt schedule. Those have been presented. It's if this bond's if passed by the accepted by the Board of Supervisors, our total debt payments will be level. Want to emphasize one more. I want to emphasize when you're looking at the resolution, you'll see the exhibit is the bond itself. And there's also a bond sale agreement and a proceeds agreement. Those are presented substantially to final form. As we get the final numbers in, those will be inserted into those numbers into those documents for signature by the chair or his designee. And do you have any questions for me? I can go over specifically what a 10%, you want to see the actual details of what goes into a 10% discount premium. But you had those documents before from, it was presented to you before, just as a reminder.
Any questions, comments, discussion? All right, thank you, Mr. Harrison. At this point, we will open up public hearing. Is anyone signed up wishing to address the board on this issue?
No, sir.
Sir, anyone present didn't have the opportunity to sign up wishing to address the board? And is there anyone online wishing to address the board?
No, sir.
Okay. At this point, we will close the public hearing. Any board discussion on the matter? Any questions, comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to, well, first of all, let's, Ms. Huffman, you want to, with Mr. Suter being out of town, we need an acting clerk just for the resolution. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And do you want to go over anything with that?
I was
Well-
just going to say, I recommend appointment of Brandy Witten as acting clerk from September 11th through September 15th of this week.
All right, that's because Mr. Suter's out of town. Is there any questions about that? All right, is there a motion to approve Ms. Witten for this week to be acting clerk?
Move.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. All right, next up, is there a motion to approve the VPS bond for the Rockbridge Innovation Center?
So move.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day, Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well. Thank you. I hope Ms. Witten is gracious in her newfound powers. My mistake, and I need to back up on the agenda to the item number 9, the consideration to exercise the option to purchase the Rafine property. I believe Mr. Harrison has some financing options. I was under the impression that would go to the finance committee, but I believe that's already happened. So could you?
My apologies to the board. I should have interjected myself during that discussion and I didn't. After the last board meeting, Mr. Suter had approached me and said as that some of the board had asked if it would be more financially advantageous if we financed with a bank loan, not a bond, this project for the purchase of the Raffine property versus using our reserves. So Davenport presented it's a very basic cost benefit analysis. I had suggested to them look at no more than 10 years. 10 years seemed appropriate for this amount of money. If with our current interest rates, investments, we ended actually July with about 5.33. That was our average. I think VIP ended up with 5.4 or 5.5% at the end of July. And that looks to be strong right now. With some of the other bank interest rates for similar projects with Davenport has worked on for taxable loans for local governments. It's been about 6.25% lately. But in short, if we took out a 10-year taxable bank loan versus keeping our money invested, the 1.25 million, we would save the county about $250,000 over 10 years. Because our net interest at 6.25 would be $469,688 $1,000 in interest, but interest on investments of $1,250,000 at our current interest rate. Our total interest earned would be $727,413. And just to note, that's not even compound interest. So a bank loan can be, we'd have to do an RFP. So that would give our local banks an opportunity to submit to respond to that. And that can, both Mr. Loro and Davenport said they're confident we can meet that by the end of this calendar year as far as the advertising and all those things. So that would meet is my understanding, the goal to get this wrapped up by the end of this calendar year. And that can happen. And that's what there would be, and we can all work out those details and stuff. I know Mr. Laurel has experience, and so does Ms. Huffman, working out all those arrangements with how it works with EDA and leaseback agreements. The finance committee met on Friday to look this over. Ms. Flint was present with that meeting, and we're keeping her informed. If this is direction of the board, she'll be a part of the working group to help get the bank loan process so that she can stay involved. So our recommendation, Davenport and myself would be to consider the bank loan. And that was the recommendation of the finance committee as well.
That is with that interest rate staying for over the 10 years,
Correct.
which if it does not, then I guess we can reassess if we're going to pay this loan off early. Would that be the?
Yes, Ms. Huffman actually had brought up a good point. If we want to consider being able to do early payments, we need to be explicit with that in our RFP language. Sometimes banks might want to charge a little bit higher interest rate if we have a prepayment clause in there. But that's just something we would need to put in the RFP for consideration. So thank you for catching that. So we can't put that. Now you can't do that with a bond. Well, first thing, this amount of money is not worth going after a bond. It's just bond issuance cost is you need to get at least $4 or $5 million for going for a bond is worth the money. But with the bank loan, and he also has a little bit more flexibility as well. And if I may, we do an RFP, if the interest rates, if we don't get good terms, we still have,
Re-
can still
we
fall back
reconsider.
on
Right.
cash funding.
Exactly.
Any comments from Finance Committee?
I think he did a good job explaining. And if we don't get a good rate from the banks, then we can pay for it.
Yeah, I would certainly hope that, it would be without any type of prepayment penalty in the contract. Because while interest rates are good right now, the prevailing thought is that by end of the year, first part of next year, they'll start turning down. So your gap, which is beneficial to us right now, may not be that way for an extended period of time.
Yes, sir. That's true. And also, hopefully this will really take off and start getting all the property leased out. You'll have a lot more money coming in sooner. We want to be able to use that to pay off.
Yeah.
So we'll, if that's the direction of the board, we'll make that very clear that that needs to be in the RFP.
So we've had a motion and a second to purchase the property. Is there anything that needs to be done as far as the financing option, or is it just consensus?
I would think action would be preferred to pursue financing versus cash payment. And then the details of the financing will have to come back to the board at some point when we get approval on the whoever selected under the RFP and the details of the leaseback arrangement, because that's going to probably involve the county building. It's the only asset the county has that's currently unencumbered. So, and I think we did a previous one for the courthouse many years ago, where we used a school. But this is a lower value, and so this building is sufficient to secure this transfer. And that would eliminate having any kind of lien on the economic development property, which is the idea, to have that clear so that what we need to do with it, if anything, you can do fairly quickly and easily without the need to release it from a deed of trust.
I'm assuming you could also look at from a closing cost and legal cost matter, going to be almost a cash secured type where we use one of our accounts as collateral versus the county building.
Not something I've ever seen before, but that doesn't mean it's not a possibility. We'll
Maybe
ask
a
about it.
cheaper interest rate as well, because it's guaranteed funds.
Yeah.
I'll bring, yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah. I'll bring that up to Mr. Rowland.
So I believe what I've heard is we need a motion and a second to proceed with an RFP for financing options to provide the proceeds to purchase property. And from that point, then the Finance Committee, along with Ms. Flint, Mr. Suter, Ms. Huffman, everybody will work together to determine the best options. And once the options are all figured out, they'll bring it back to the full board for consideration again. That's
Yes,
okay.
sir.
All right. So do we have a motion to proceed with the financing?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Lyons.
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and Chair votes yes as well.
My apologies to the board again. I should have been a little bit more assertive.
That's my fault.
Yeah,
I
me
jumped the
too. I
gun and moved
just
forward too fast.
Skipped it.
All right. Any board comments? Mr. Lewis, you have anything?
No, I could ask Ms. Ayers some other time, but I guess it might be beneficial. Any updates on the tourism director
I haven't,
process search or anything that you can share?
we're getting applications, but other than that, I don't have much to share.
So we have gotten some already. Yeah. I've seen the advertisements. That's good.
I will hope to update you next meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Day, you have anything?
Oh, sure.
Ms. Ayers?
No.
Mr. Lyons? No, sir. Ms. Huffman, you have anything to add?
Sir.
All right, just a couple of quick things. Again, with today being September 11th, I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank all of our first responders in our community for the service and all that they do for our community, and the volunteers, paid staff, everybody. It's a tremendous responsibility, and even, with the sheriff's office and law enforcement, it's a dangerous job, and they perform admirably, and they do our community a great service. I'm very thankful to have them. And then also the county fair just concluded. I'm not sure if you have any information about it, but I can tell you just by the crowds and the people, it seemed to be a tremendous success. I mean, there was quite a nice crowd every night. Anything you'd like to add about that?
I think it went really well. There was a couple issues weather-wise. It was dragged down a little bit because of lightning and thunder, but it was pretty well attended. Anybody who's got any suggestions of changes or anything like that, I would say send them to the fair board or to Thomas, because there were a couple suggestions that were made to me, and so I just passed them along. They're really receptive to any kind of suggested changes or advertising and things like that. So, but I think it went really well. It's a pretty good crowd.
Great. Okay. Thank you to the fair board for hard work on that. All right, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lyons,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and Chair votes yes as well. Thank everyone for attending. Please be careful on your way home.